Welcome to The Work in Between, the podcast where we explore topics and daily habits that help us reach our health related goals. I'm your host, Gretchen Holmes, and I am so glad you're here today. We have a really interesting guest today. Zeina Habib is an embodiment coach, and I'm going to let Zeina explain what that means. But first, let me welcome you to the show.
Hey, thank you so much for having me today. I'm really happy to be with you and your audience.
We're so excited to have you. So, I've talked to a lot of coaches, but I have never met an embodiment coach. So, what is that? What is it that you do?
Yeah, of course. So when I talk about embodiment, the most important thing to remember is any change we want to do is a change of identity, a change of being. We tend to think a lot about, the mind, like what is the mentality we are in? What are the things we need to change? But we never focus a lot on the body itself. If you think about it, when you're, you know, eating, when you're interrupting someone, when you're interacting with anyone, you are using your body. You're using your mouth, you're using your hands, you're using your legs, everything is through the body. So the change is not just happening in the mindset and the brain, it's happening in the brain and in the body, in the way we move, and in our inner sensations, because our feelings are not in our brain. Our feelings happen in our body when we're afraid, when we're bored. All of it is energy that spreads through the body or moves through the body. So, embodiment coaching helps people approach everything from all of these dimensions, from the mind, the body, whether it's sensation, whether it's movement, whether it's posture, and how to create the concept of practice in order to create the new identity we want to move into.
Well, that brings up a lot of questions. So, well, first of all, how did you get into this? This is an interesting area, and not necessarily one that I think a lot of people know about. So, did something specific bring you to this point where you decided, yeah, this is what I want to get into?
Yeah, I think when I first moved to the States, it was hard to kind of find community because I didn't know anyone, and I've always wanted to take up dancing like really as a hobby. I used to
Mhm.
always dance, but never took it like super seriously. And I moved here, took it seriously, and just started doing it. And I noticed that there's a lot of things that you get when you move through movement that
Mm,
you don't get when you don't. And then I was interested, like, what does it look like to put dancing and movement and the body into coaching? And I
mm.
started digging and digging more, and I discovered this whole world that linked those two, and not just two, like it was even more, but it started from there. It started from my love and passion for dancing and movement and how all of it changed my life.
Oh, wow. That's very cool. It's such a blessing when we get an opportunity to bring things together that we love, right? And not having to choose. So, from a practical perspective, if somebody like me who had a lot of weight to lose, right? I had to change a lot of behaviors and figure out a new healthy lifestyle. I had to build one. If I come to you, what would I expect as far as how would working with someone like yourself help me to achieve those goals?
Yeah, of course. So I think the first thing we always start with, the first layer, is the layer of listening and awareness. How do
Mhm.
you listen to your body, to your mind, to everything that you're in right now? So a level of observation, what is your relationship to food? How do you see food? When do you eat? Like what is the established routine that you have?
Mhm.
That and what is the mindset that you relate food to? And what is your bodily reaction to food?
Mhm.
Because when you're eating, there's not just it's not like I'm hungry and I'm eating. There's a lot of other things involved. And sometimes maybe a sense of eating a lot or eating a little creates a certain sense of safety for you. So all of these things, we explore them to know where you're at. What is it that's triggering?
Mhm.
And we start using the mindset itself and the body sensation itself.
Mhm.
So if you're looking for a certain body sensation through food, we start to explore how can we access it differently? What does it mean
Mhm.
to access it differently? And what does it mean sometimes to sit with sensation, because I feel a lot of the time with food, it comes to our mind that we need to eat. We feel a certain sensation, maybe a high energy or maybe a low energy or whatever it is. And we're looking to get out of the sensation. Like, how do I move this sensation out of my body? And
Mhm.
a lot of the work revolves around, instead of moving out of the sensation, how do I sit with the sensation, be able to hold it so that then I can release it instead of looking in every direction to just get rid of it.
Yeah, I had this conversation a couple of times over the last week, and obviously, those of us who have a problem with eating our feelings. Some people smoke, some people gamble, some people drink, whatever. We do everything we possibly can to avoid dealing with them. It doesn't occur to us to just deal with it, right? We want to use something to self-soothe, whatever that is. But most of us are not taught how to be comfortable in that discomfort, which is what leads us to avoiding those feelings to begin with, right? So I really like this idea of having the opportunity to learn how to be comfortable in that discomfort instead of turning to whatever will give you the immediate release that you're looking for or escape, right? So how do you do that?
So there's a lot of exercises that we do, which you know how like when you go to the gym, you
Mhm.
start doing dumbbells, you start with, I don't know, 3 pounds, and then you up it to 5 pounds and then to 7 pounds. So the way we start at first is within the session, we create the trigger. So I have my clients think of the trigger, like it provoke in their body the trigger of wanting to eat, the trigger of maybe like other things like wanting to interrupt in a meeting, whatever it is that they're trying to change, to provoke it and get that sensation in their body. And then we start breathing through it. Sometimes we do movement through it. We find activities that help them practice that sense of containing the sensation. For example, for me, walking in nature creates a sense of calm that
Mhm.
takes away any of those discomfort that I need to directly eat. It creates a sense of self-soothing for me.
Mhm.
Um, Climbing on a wall for me, for example, gives me a sense of patience because I need to focus on what I'm doing. So I don't have
Mhm.
space for other things and I can sit in that patience. So we create it in the session, sometimes through movements, through metaphors, through breathing exercises, and then we go away with whatever activity that helps that person grow it. With mine, I'm just taking it maybe a bit to the extreme with climbing and walking. A lot of people take one yoga pose, take simply breathing exercises. So it kind of depends on the person and where they're more comfortable. I don't like to push someone who's like very active into like the deepest meditation to kind of like
Yeah.
trying to find something that the person can actually do and start building that capacity. So we start with like a small trigger and then we sit through the sensation for a bit and then a bigger trigger and a bigger trigger. And I think the first thing is to practice it. Like every morning, wake up, create that trigger and do your practice, because when you get to the actual moment, if you have the habit to sit with the sensation, it's much easier than trying to practice it when it happens. So if you're
Mhm.
feeling like I need to eat right now, you don't have that strength to get this sensation through. But if you've practiced it on days where you were calm, on days where you did not actually feel it, you have built up that strength. You have
Mm.
built up that capacity to hold those emotions.
Nice. I find for me, I get very preoccupied around food. I always have. I mean, I've always, now they call it food noise. And I think it's a great descriptor of it because if I'm not eating something, I'm thinking about what I'm going to eat. And if I've just eaten, I'm thinking about what I just ate. And then I'm thinking about whatever the next meal is or the next snack is. I've always been preoccupied with food, but it used to be surrounded with a lot of anxiety. Now it's not so much anxiety. It's now I'm trying to just make sure I have everything in place so that whatever I'm going to eat, it's healthy. But when the food noise gets really loud, the one thing I find works really well is if I physically get up and I walk into another room and I organize a drawer, just anything to stop focusing on the food, to stop the noise in my head. And something that simple, I've learned, has stopped the incessant thinking that I have around food. And then I'm okay for a while. And it may creep back, but I do find having to make myself focus on something helps. And I could see why rock climbing would do that, because, or, on a climbing wall, because you can't afford to not think about where you're going to put your hand or your foot, So yeah, I think you don't have to go rock climbing, but changing where you're sitting or the room you're in often is enough to shift it as well. But that doesn't mean you're dealing with the emotion that you're trying to avoid.
Yes, so dealing with the emotion comes with learning how to sit with the sensation.
Yeah.
Because what are emotions? When you think about the concept, if you've heard, emotions don't last long in our body. The what lasts long is moods. Moods are longer in our body, but the emotion
Mhm.
itself doesn't last long. And what is emotion? Emotion, people use the word feeling because you're feeling it. It's a
Mhm.
sensation. If you think about anxiety, sometimes it's like a huge energy that you feel like the energy is bigger than your body. If
Mhm.
you think about, people who are more low energy, you feel like you can't get up, you can't move. All of it is a sense that is happening in your body.
Mhm.
And if you remind yourself that this is not a long lasting thing, this is about me sitting through it. Like a plank. If you're doing a plank, you have a minute where you have to feel very uncomfortable in a plank position because you're trying to get stronger. The same is happening here. If you can sit with that emotion, and when I say sit with that emotion, I want to remind of one thing. It's a non-judgmental sit. It's a
Mhm.
feeling of like, hey, this is what I'm feeling. No shoulds, no have, no I shouldn't, nothing like that. This is what I'm feeling. This is what's happening now. This is the energy I'm in, and it's going to pass and it's going to go through. And how can I augment that capacity for this? How can I augment the capacity to not react directly?
Mhm.
And how can I remind myself that emotions are an alarm? There isn't, the good and bad labels we've put on emotion is interesting because no emotion is good or bad. If
Mhm.
you're in the middle of the road of a highway, is fear good or bad? If you're standing in the middle of a highway,
Fear is good.
fear is good. But if you are, like you were talking with food, is fear good? Sometimes it's not. It's just a false alarm and
Yeah.
it's pushing you in a different direction.
Yeah.
So if we kind of remove that label and be like, this is an alarm. I need to feel it. I need to know if it's right, if it's wrong for the moment. Like, what do I do with it? And
Mhm.
then move through to the action. This is
Mhm.
the this is kind of the road to go to. But that requires mindset change. That
Mhm.
requires a very high awareness of our body, and the ability to sit with those emotions and be able to transform or use both the mindset and the body awareness to create the change we want. And all of that simply requires practice.
Mhm. Yeah, I've never been a big fan of attributing emotions to being good or bad, positive or negative, or food being good food or bad food, or I was bad because I ate a piece of cake, or I was good because I ate a salad. The whole labeling gets us into a really bad mindset to begin with, because then you get guilt, then you get self-shaming, then you get all of it, then it just becomes this mess. So I'm curious, how does this help directly, and we've talked about it a little bit, but if you were explaining how this helps behavior change, right? Because one of the things I've noticed based on what I've read and just in talking with you, we spend an awful lot of time in our heads, way more time than we need to in our heads, right? And we can talk ourselves into and out of pretty much anything. We're really good at that. But for helping us with long-term behavior change, what are your suggestions for anyone who's like, I really want to, for example, become more self-aware right? Because it's easy to say, well, you learn to sit with whatever you need to sit with, but how do you become more self-aware? I
Okay.
mean, that to me seems really key to this.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So there's two parts to this.
Uh-huh.
The first part, if we want to talk general behavior change, and then I'll move on to self-awareness specifically.
Okay, perfect.
When we talk about general change, the first thing I ask my client, why do you want to make that change?
Mhm.
Because a lot of people come, I have like, they want to wake up at 5 a.m. I hear that a lot, for example, sometimes. Why? For some people, that doesn't work. It's not a good decision. It's not a good change to make. It just
Just
doesn't work.
no, not a good decision for you.
Yeah,
Okay.
because there's no reason why they want to do it except like maybe, I don't know, my neighbor does it or someone successful I know does it.
Yeah.
The why has to be very deep and very relevant to you in
Mhm.
order for you to make a change. That is the first most important thing. The second thing is why not? Why not make the change? Because there are a lot of parts of you that are going to fight the change. They're
Mhm.
going to be like, no, you don't need it. We don't have time, or whatever it is. And if you're not aware of them, if you're not like, these are the why nots, these are the things I need to be, careful with, I need to be working with, not against.
Mhm.
So if the why not of, I don't know, waking up at 5 a.m., I need more sleep, could be sleep an hour earlier. You need to just find something for it so it's not fighting you back the whole time.
Mhm.
The third thing is start small. Start very small. You do not have to wake up every day. You could say, I want to start with 2 times a week and then go on. You could say, I want to start with, if you're trying to lose weight or you're trying to change your mentality around that, maybe exercising instead of every day once a week, maybe changing one meal, like eating one meal that is good and then thinking about the rest later on. It's about very small change that is very consistent. So why? Why not? What are the very small actions that I want to do consistently? And then looking in the why and why not, what are the mindset and body behavior and reactions and sensations we need to support us or play against us? This is where if I wake up in the morning and I'm having this huge anxiety and I can't get out of bed, how do I deal with it so I don't fall into the inability to create that change? So
Mhm.
it's kind of how do I help my mindset and my body support it? And how do I make it in such small changes that it does not feel overwhelming? When you're creating change, you're creating a shock for your mind and your body. Your body cannot handle a lot of new sensations at the same time or a lot of new things. It can handle the right amount, and figuring that out and being able to work with it is very important.
Mhm.
So I feel like the why not, the small practice, and then the awareness of the mindset and the body sensation and behavior we need to support that. And then just working through it and iterating. If something doesn't work, it's okay. What can I do next? And this requires a lot of acceptance. If this needs to be done, if we're failing, acceptance means what can I do differently? It doesn't mean I'm a failure. It doesn't mean I can't do this. It doesn't mean let's change everything. It means what do I need to adjust?
Mhm.
Now, when it comes to self-awareness, there's multiple areas in it. I talk about self-awareness of thoughts. So simply choosing one thing or choosing a morning practice or a night practice where I'm like, what were the most important thoughts I had today? Or, what are the thoughts that I remember I had today and the mindset? Like, did I think today I'm a failure? I can't do anything right. I'm tired, whatever it is. The second thing is sensation awareness. So when someone says something to me, does it create a level of anxiety? What are the very strong or very little sensations I felt today in my body? And this could be done with like putting an alarm 2 times, 3 times a day and stopping to check what is happening. Is there an area that's more cold, area that's more hot, an area that's more holding tension?
Mhm.
And then noticing our posture. Do we notice that when someone says something to us, we tend to go in because we're feeling less confident when they say it? Do we open up more? Just try to like observing ourselves, how we move. How does our body move or change? What is it? What are the things that we react to? And
Mhm.
how do we react to them? And starting to notice after what the actual thoughts are and the actual body reactions are, when do they happen? What are they related to? What is triggering what? And all of that, as I said earlier, being done with a high level of acceptance, because we are scientists here. We're scientists doing experiments. We are not judges. We are not trying to say what is right and wrong. We're just trying to understand what, as human beings, makes us feel more loved, gives us that sense of
Mhm.
self-soothing, and what
Yeah.
doesn't. So we do more of one, less of the other, and get that sense of well-being. But all of this requires us to know ourselves where we are right now in a very gentle and loving way.
That is so important. I think we all realize how we talk to ourselves, the language we use to talk about ourselves, to ourselves, the thoughts we have. Well, they matter. Our bodies respond, whether we think they do or not, or it does or not. We talk to ourselves. And if there's one message that I wish I could get out to everybody is to stop beating yourself up. We tend to like this idea of perfection, that as long as we do everything exactly right, we're fine. But the second we overeat something, or we work out, or it's only 10 minutes instead of 60 minutes, there is this tendency to go, well, I blew it. That's it. I'm done. Can't do it. Yet sometimes when we start, and everybody's, but I suppose, not only are we going to change our diet to be incredibly healthy, but we are going to the gym every day, if not twice a day. And then we're going to, juice, and then we're going to do, whatever. And we do all these things, and there's no way that's ever going to work. It's just not, it's too much. And we fail, and then we beat ourselves up, and then we slip back into whatever these unhealthy behaviors are until we get our bearings again. You wrote something that I found, as new research into embodiment has shown that our muscles register emotional experiences and contract in the same way every time our bodies perceive any similar situation. And some of these behaviors may not even be kind of how we would if we thought about it, but our bodies don't know that. But we are beings driven by instincts in our bodies. So logic in the brain matters so little in moments when our bodies are perceiving harm and trying to protect us. The more we ignore those signals, the harder it will be to create the life we want. We will be governed by our previous experiences and our upbringing. We will be falling through life instead of writing our own destiny. I think that's incredibly powerful. Incredibly powerful, to be falling through life instead of writing our own destiny, because that's the way we always responded. That's the way our body knows to respond, and it doesn't know how to respond any differently. So I really like what you wrote there. I'm sure that some people just don't feel they have any control at all over how they respond to their emotions. Is that true?
You know what's interesting, and that is something that's happened 2 weeks ago. I heard someone say something that really caught my eye.
Yeah.
The problem is we think that if we have we think that having no control gives us that freedom of having to do anything about it. Like, if I
Ah,
have no control, then I don't have to do anything.
yeah.
But here's the trick. And people start feeling shame because here, if they do think that that I have control, like, oh, I'm ashamed because I couldn't fix it in 1 day, or I couldn't fix it in 2 days. So they hold themselves responsible for the behavior so much that it's
Mhm.
easier to just blame it or remove it off of themselves. But here's what helped a lot of my clients release themselves from that. These behavior are not your fault, but they're your responsibility to change.
Mm,
So you are released from the guilt of that because you did not start this. This is something that's in your body. This is something that's present, but you have a responsibility to create the change.
mhm.
They might keep happening. your responsibility is not in them happening. Your responsibility is them happening less, is in you deciding to wake up every morning and saying, today, instead of me reacting without thinking 70%, I'm going to react less. I'm going to react 65%. And this 5%, I'm going to use it to do more of sitting with my body and creating new ways of existing in this world. There's so much power of detaching ourselves
Mhm.
from from that shame and guilt of how we grew up, but attaching ourselves from the responsibility that we can change. There's so much freedom in it. You can do whatever you want. It's possible, but you're just starting with something that is what it is. You can't change what you're starting with. You can change how you use it every day.
Yeah, I've been doing some reading, and one of the things that I have been learning is we don't always have to respond. For example, if somebody at work tends to say something that really irritates us, we don't have to let it get to us. We have a choice. We can just take a deep breath and carry on with our day, or we can let it get to us and ruin the rest of our day. That's a choice. And it really is quite freeing when we intentionally realize and intentionally make that choice to not let it bother us, to just dismiss it, acknowledge it, and move on. That is where the power, I think, lies.
100%. And this is where, when I talk about a lot, like things live in our muscles sometimes.
Mhm.
Sometimes you, like when someone talks to you at work, or when you, let's say you overeat for a day
Mhm.
and then you feel guilty, your body moves into a stance of, I am not worthy,
Mhm.
or I am ashamed.
Yeah.
All of your body moves into this because this is protective.
Yeah.
And if you try, I want like to challenge people in that moment, if you try to open up, you are going to feel such a discomfort, because in that moment you don't think you deserve to be this person.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
until you practice that more,
Mhm.
until you learn that you don't need to hold the stance, you don't need to hold the tension that happens, like doing that whenever you're feeling angry, you don't need all of these things in that moment, because you're no longer in that space that you think you're in.
Yeah.
You just need to practice putting yourself in that stand, practice releasing all of this so you can show up better. Practice every time saying, I don't deserve to be talked to that way. And maybe today I wasn't able to respond the way I wanted to, but I'm going to practice, and tomorrow I'm going to show up and I'm going to be able to do it.
Right. And I'm not going to carry it around all day either.
No.
Right.
Yeah.
Because that is detrimental as well. And, the person who may have said something or irritated me, they're not thinking about it. They're not thinking about me. But if I let it ruin the rest of my day, that's on me.
Oh,
That
yeah.
is completely on me. So, yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot of power here that might be a little counterintuitive, but boy, it's there. So, I always ask my guests, what are a couple of things that we could do starting today that will help us move forward in our journey? And we've talked about a lot of things, really great stuff. But if you could recommend two or three things that says, okay, start here by doing what?
Okay. I'm going to give three things.
Okay.
The first one is increasing awareness
Mhm.
by doing 3 checks per day,
Okay.
body and mindset check. So you put an alarm, you stop, you think, what am I sensing? No judgment. You don't need to change anything. What is happening in my body? Cold, warm, is there tension anywhere? Is there extra energy in any space of my body? And what is my mindset? Am I talking to myself and saying a lot of like terrible things? Am I saying good things? What is the self-talk like in that moment? 3 times per day, no judgment, noting it down and just noticing what is happening, creating that self-awareness to know ourselves better. Second thing, whatever you are looking to change right now, pick one very small, measurable action that you can be consistent with over a period of at least a month or two. That is all you need to do. You don't need to think about whether you're doing this whole big thing. Just make sure you're doing that action consistently over those 2, 3 months and see how your confidence in yourself to be able to actually create change is going to go higher, and how you will slowly incorporate new stuff. Just intuitively, new stuff will come in because it becomes easier and more clear to you how you can actually practice those things. Third one, which is going to sound very interesting, but practice gratitude.
Yeah.
Just every day, a sense of gratitude, because we are so quick. Our mind, the way it's made, is to notice danger and notice the negative things and protect us. We don't have that skill ingrained in us to think about the good things that happened.
Mhm.
But that is super important because self acceptance, because growth, because change all start from a positive space in our body, from a place of love and acceptance. And all of that comes from realizing all the good we have in our life, not just the things we want to change.
Agree. All excellent suggestions, and I think all things that any one of us could do. How do we get a hold of you if we're interested in learning more about what you do?
Yeah, so I do have a website, which I will share with you so you can put in the episode. It's
Mhm.
voice within, voice_within.com.
Mhm.
And they can find me on LinkedIn, Zaina Habib, or on Instagram, Zaina Habib Coaching.
Excellent. And just to let you know, you spell your first name Zeina and then Habib, just so that folks can get that. You know, Zaina, this has been a wonderful conversation. I knew it would be. You've given us so much to think about. I've really enjoyed having the opportunity to talk with you. So thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It really has been a great conversation.
Thank you. So, what resonated with you this time on the show? I'd love to hear about it. Please send me a note at www.gretchenholmesphd.com. You know, I'd love to hear from you. If you have any ideas about a show, send those along as well. I think that we all realize everybody has all sorts of options to tune in or read or whatever social media you use. So I just want to say thank you for taking the time to spend your valuable time with us. Now from me to you, remember to love and celebrate yourself today. Don't wait until you feel worthy, because you already are. Loving yourself is the first step to good health. And a quick reminder that this podcast is not intended nor implied to be a substitute for professional medical advice. Until next time, take care.